All right, cool. Let's go ahead and get started here. I am excited about this topic. I think that we're going to have a very fun conversation here because normally, it's just me presenting, or it's just Anthony presenting, or maybe even Steve and I. But this time we actually have Steve Pattinson, Anthony Lee, and of course myself, Brian Johnson, who are going to collaborate on what we call Amazon brand halo effect. We're going to put in context as far as the Amazon space. There is some industry terminology here, but I'll have Anthony, you'll probably run through that and clarify that for everybody, of course. But let me go ahead and jump in here. First and foremost, give me an X if you can see the image, basically the slide that says Amazon brand halo effect. Just kind of quick test to make sure you can see that. I am sharing it correctly. Cool. Awesome. Appreciate that. Let me go ahead and make sure. Yes, okay. I want to make sure I was recording. All right, let's go ahead and jump in here. So before we do get started here, I just want to take a quick minute to let you know that this workshop is sponsored by an awesome, phenomenal, best-in-class advertising agency team, of course, that I built. No ego there whatsoever, right? But I know the people that have got behind me, and we've got an awesome dynamic within the organization. So that includes multi-million-dollar brands, top Amazon insiders, um, trained, accredited experts in each of their fields with a proven track record of high performance ad management and listing management. So if your brand, this is the pitch, right? We'll get this out of the way here. If your brand is ready to level up your competitive presence and profitability on Amazon, then I'd like to reach out to my team at canopymanagement.com/webinar-offer. That kind of tags it to make sure that we're doing our job correctly as far as bringing awesome new partners into the fold, into under the canopy. Um, yeah, if you haven't had one of those conversations, I can tell you it is absolutely worth it because we do a deep dive into how you're doing your listings, how you're doing your ad accounts, and we'll tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly, sometimes more ugly than others, and that's okay. So if you choose to work with us, awesome. If you find it's a good fit, great. If not, then you've got something to take away. So, do yourself a favor if you haven't already. Book a section, basically an audit, I would say, and a discussion with our team just to get some feedback from those who are killing it in this space, which is definitely what our team is doing. You can see some big numbers there. I can definitely discuss that during Q&A and that kind of stuff. For now, let's go ahead and jump in here. I am going to, and I also want to give a big shout out to Alexandria. Thank you for supporting us on this one. She's the one who's dropping the links into the all I see it to the panelists. Hopefully that went out to everybody, to all the attendees, so you at least have the link there. But I absolutely could not do this without the support of Alexandria. So thank you so much. Let me introduce the three of us, just so that those of you who are aware. Um, give me a 0 if you've never heard of any of us before. I love that when that happens. That means that we are actually reaching new people. Um, so my name is Brian Johnson. I go by Brian R. Johnson because it's kind of a generic name, right? So I have in my lifespan on Amazon. Now I've been in e-commerce for over 14 years, but I've been in the Amazon space for over 6 years. And so in this time, I've had the privilege of coaching over 20,000 brands to sell more on Amazon. And Canopy Management now has over a billion, that's with a B, under management that we have had the opportunity to work with. So I say that not to brag, it's simply just to say, look, we've got a ton of experience and we want to share some of that with you today so that you can take action and really build that brand halo effect for your brand and for your products. If you choose to work with us at some point, awesome. If not, make sure you're taking notes, make sure you're taking screenshots during this workshop so that you've got something you can take action on today. Okay, not next week, today, please. That's the biggest disappointment that we have as speakers, as teachers in this space, is that if nobody takes action, then we failed at our job. So don't let us fail. For some of you who have followed me over the years, you would know that I had founded the Facebook group, Amazon PPC Troubleshooting Group, the PPC Scope software, which is the original Amazon ad platform, sponsored Products Academy 1, 2, and 3, plus a couple of revisions and variations there. And then, of course, Canopy Management, of course, is the one who sponsors this workshop, is our done-for-you multi-service advertising agency, which has a phenomenal team. We hire the best and we retain the best. So let me move forward here a little bit here. Steve Pattinson. Steve is the head of our creative services department at Canopy Management. He's one of these guys that is constantly shouted out among our team, among our clients, as you guys just killed it for us. This is amazing. Steve is the reason for that. He's the one who keeps all of his research and his design and creative teams together and moving forward with the project in order to make sure that he gets the results. I can tell you right now, Steve is one of those soft-spoken powerhouses, and we tease him about it. But he is just a brilliant mind, and I love having him as part of the Canopy Management team. He's got over 20 years of experience in retail management and visual merchandising, which is really important for this topic. And of course, is responsible for managing one of our third-party seller accounts that quickly grew from about a little over $1 million to over $5 million. Nice job on that, Steve. And of course, he is the one who designed and leads our teams. Teams is, plural. For listing optimization, we'll get into more detail as far as how you can execute on some of the wisdom that he's going to impart today, and that has helped Canopy to produce for our partners, for our clients, an average of 38% boost in Amazon conversion rates for the product. So glad to have you here, Steve. And then finally, let me go ahead and introduce Anthony Lee. Anthony Lee is a face that you probably have seen for many years. He is now part of Canopy Management. He is our Amazon subject matter expert. So him and I will be bouncing content off of each other all day long, every week. And he's been a speaker, a consultant, a thought leader, as many of you know who have followed Anthony over the years. He is an OG in this space. He is the former chief operating officer for Zonblast, later on turns into Sixleaf. He was one of the top content managers at Helium 10. He was also the CEO of Signalytics. I used to mispronounce that one as Signalytics, but it's Signalytics as I went to be corrected on. Yes. Speaker, teacher, consultants to 6, 7, and 8-figure brands. You also sell your own products as well, as I do. And obviously his emphasis, like mine, has been on the Amazon space, including ranking algorithm, buyer psychology. You wouldn't believe some of the discussions that we get into as far as buyer psychology between the three of us. It is just, we could go for 4 hours on this topic, I'm sure. So this is something we're very passionate about, and hopefully you'll get that. You'll feel that today, and you'll be taking notes and screenshots. Okay. Remember I said that earlier. There's a reason for that. Let's go ahead and move forward here. Steve and Anthony, did you have anything you wanted to add for anybody, or was that sufficient?
I think that's great. I'm just really happy to be here.
All right.
Yeah, I couldn't follow up. That was a wonderful, thank you for that intro.
Good. Let me go ahead and throw it over. Give me a 1 in the chat. I'm going to ask for your engagement because I want to make sure you guys are paying attention and not working on, a video game in the corner there. Give me a 1 in the chat if you guys are ready to get started, because Anthony's going to jump in here directly into the brand halo effect. We're not going to mess around anymore. Yes. Love it. Wow. I don't know if you guys can see that. It's just flying up. All right, Anthony, I'm going to hand it over to you. Let me know when you want me to change slides and that kind of stuff, but go ahead and dig in.
Absolutely. So first, the most logical question at this point is what exactly is what we're calling a brand halo effect? So in the context of Amazon, this is essentially the overarching effect that branding actions have on everything, on customers, on your business as a whole, on your relationship with Amazon and its marketplace. So basically these branding actions, which we'll go into more detail about what those are, it creates a halo effect that positively impacts everything else. Your brand perception, customer satisfaction. literally your branding and your branding actions can impact customer satisfaction with their purchase. Crazy, right? Also, Amazon's perception of your listing, like literally how you interact with the marketplace, can be impacted by these actions that we're going to talk about. The effectiveness of your advertising, which I hope Brian spends a good amount of time on, because it's fascinating to learn that these actions can actually impact how much you're paying for customers and your paid media, and the profitability of your product as a whole. See, what we found was that traditional optimization, listing optimization discussions, they just don't go far enough. The thing is having an optimized listing, optimized copy, and really nice photography is expected, right? That's not like, you're not going above and beyond by doing that. That's expected. So what we're here to talk about is, like, what are those actions that get you to go above and beyond? All right, I'm done with that slide. All right, so here is the real question, though, that a lot of people ask when we talk about branding. Are Amazon shoppers even brand loyal? Like, we hear it from so many thought leaders and, dare I say the word, gurus in this space, not to spend time with branding activities, because a lot of the data suggests that buyers aren't brand loyal. And actually, self-reported surveys that have been done on this topic confirm that. Most young millennials and Gen Z buyers who effectively control the market right now, the consumer market right now, most of them report that they're not loyal to a brand. However, people don't know why they do the things that they do. So I don't follow self-reported survey data, because it was a great quote, actually. I have it written down because I'm gonna make a video about this. I love this. It's from legendary advertising expert David Ogilvy. He said, "The trouble with market research is people don't think what they feel, say what they think, or do what they say." So take that, do with that what you will. But I am a firm advocate of taking the extra thoughtful steps and engaging in these brand activities so you can have that positive impact on your business. All right. And I'm
That's a
done
whole
with this.
CIA case study by itself, I'm sure. So,
Right.
just in psychology. So
All right.
cool. All right. So at this point, what we want to do is we want to switch it over to Steve, actually. So Steve, what we're going to have you jump into here is talking about how you can trigger, right, the Amazon brand halo effect, right?
Yeah, excellent. So to just follow up on what Anthony just said, I think from my perspective, from the seat that I sit in, customers on Amazon are loyal to brands. They might not be loyal to a brand, but they are loyal to brands. It's a byproduct of our standard listing optimization process. I think that what we do a little differently than anybody else is really focus on branding. If you start with branding and you follow that, then you have a trustworthy listing that's likely to convert. So standard listing optimization byproduct is you're starting to move towards a branded entity on Amazon. Then everything else makes sense. It kind of lubricates all the gears for the rest of the process. So I would say how you trigger the Amazon brand halo effect in your business is to start thinking about your business as a brand entity. Amazon's been making a lot of moves over the years. It started with like just the introduction of A+ content, brand registry. Now you've got manager customer experience. There's all these moves that Amazon is making to say, we prioritize real, trustworthy, notable brands on our platform. And if you're part of that movement, I think you're going to see a lot more success than if you're just, someone who's sourcing products and, selling them on Amazon. No shame in that game, but I think that's where you get into the trouble of, lookalikes. Everybody else in that space becomes saturated. And what we tend to see is brands who've established the trust with their customer base are going to start elevating, whereas everybody else is just going to race to the bottom of that space from a pricing perspective. So everything we do in our listing optimization process is really based on the fundamental consumer psychology of people want to trust that you're in it for the long haul. They want to they want to feel like you understand them as a customer, and any effort you can make to go that direction is branding. And I think it's easy to just overlook that, but Amazon's placed such a priority on that as being the way forward that I'd hate to
Yeah,
see
and I want to
immigrants
I want to
degrade.
make sure that everybody heard exactly one of the things that you said on there is that you were talking about as far as like race to the bottom. There's a common misconception is that price is what drives the sales, and in some respects that is certainly true for those who are actually searching for price, who are searching for the cheapest option. Um, that is simply is like, okay, maybe I don't trust the product. Maybe we can talk about that more as far as we go through the next slides here, which are going to be filled with information here. But um, things as far as like what influences people's decision, whether it's the brand trust, familiarity of that brand, whether it's the price, whether it is social proof like reviews, whether it has shiny, sharp colored images, whether or not it actually speaks to me. Does the brand actually say that they understand my problem in the first place? There's a lot of different factors that can go into that, and you could probably rank those in a way as far as like buyer psychology. And we're going to go through as far as like how to kind of wrap around that. So you're trying to get the majority of audience. You're never going to get 100% of the audience because some people will have their own particular nuances as far as like they're going to be in a different shopping phase. An example on that would be if somebody has previously bought two cheaper products and they got fed up with them because the quality was bad, didn't meet their expectations, and then you come in with a higher priced product, but you're also coming in with content with a message that says, we've solved the problems that they couldn't solve, then their perception changes because now all of a sudden they're looking for something that is not the lowest price. You absolutely do not want to get in a race to the bottom. Now, if you're selling face masks or hand cleaner on Amazon, you're probably running into that problem simply because of just sheer volume, hundreds of thousands of competing listings. However, in most product niches, you should be able to charge a higher amount as long as you can properly communicate and communicate your message to the target audience in order to share with them why your product is better than the next, even at a higher price point.
I would like to also chime in here, because we're about to go into slides that kind of give examples of how to implement this. But with regard to the price, because so many people say that, look, I have a good friend in this space that actually conducted a very thorough and extensive survey. And that survey data came back as pretty much the top thing that people claim that they look at when they're shopping on Amazon is price. And again, you cannot trust self-reported survey data, especially when it comes to why the motivations behind why people buy. I personally think price is on closer towards the bottom of the list of priorities. And there's a clear indication of this. Can we all agree that the products that sell the most typically rank the highest on Amazon? Am I correct in that statement? For the most part.
For the most part, yeah.
Go to Amazon and see how many premiumly priced products there are. Why, for example, does a KitchenAid can opener cost on average about $4 more than the cheapest counterparts? That's the prime example of branding. And why do people buy KitchenAid? It's because they trust the brand. Price, I don't think price is important. Look, if it was, eBay and Walmart would be way bigger platforms than they are. The fact is, people shop on Amazon because even though they claim they're looking at price, they're looking at so many other things. And price is probably very low on the list. And that's the reason why they're on Amazon. And that's the reason why premium price products rank so well and do so well. And so many sellers catapult off of Amazon because of that. Anyway, that was my 2 cents I wanted to add.
Yeah, for sure. Now, one of the things that Steve's going to go into here is talking about understanding your audience, establishing your brand, making content easy to skim, showing, not telling, talking about social proof, and talking about consistency. Consistency, actually, I love quite a bit because one of the two common things that I know from a buyer psychology, from an e-commerce psychology standpoint, is most shoppers usually bounce or leave a product listing for two reasons. They get confused or they have doubt about the purchase. So if you either confuse the shopper or if you introduce doubt in any way to the shopper, then they're going to bounce. And so part of that is consistency and making sure you're going through and taking the time to clean up your listings, maybe after you've completely redesigned it based on what you learned today. But I'll go ahead and have Steve jump in here and get into it. Yeah.
Sounds great. Just
All right. And this is I would recommend the next 3 slides. Absolutely take a screenshot.
Yeah, it's important. So I think from I guess the perspective of becoming more than just a third-party seller at Amazon, if you're in it for the long haul, you really need to start thinking about branding, and that starts with understanding your audience. And what I mean by that is you need, I mean, the term that's thrown out around, you know, the space all the time is understand your customer avatar. Well, I take a little bit of offense to that because I think it's broader than that. You need to understand who your target customer is or what that target audience is, but you need to do that in a way that is not excluding any other secondary audiences. Because, you know, if you're just hitting your target audience time and time again, well, congratulations, you've just defined, you know, the scope of your business. You're always going to sell to that avatar. They're going to come back for more, but you've already stunted your growth. So you need to look for ways to broaden your appeal over time. So it starts with great brand messaging. It starts with having a story. It starts with having great products and all of those things being cohesive and fitting together. Because all you're really looking to do is establish yourself as a trusted entity in the saturation that is the Amazon marketplace. Because people don't tend to want to engage with what they perceive as the fly by night. I found a way to source it. It's a lookalike product. It's cheap. You know, I can make a few dollars on the exchange. That's perfectly fine to do from a selling perspective, but then you have an Amazon hobby, not so much an Amazon business. I think that there's the true differentiator is to lean into branding. So make sure you do the research, understand who your audience is and what that scope could possibly be. You want to target your primary audience. Sorry.
I was going to say, as far as primary audience, I'm going to blindside you here with a question. So that I think that the audience wants to hear, and that is, what is an example of focusing in on your target audience?
You just need to understand what solutions your product offers to the marketplace. Be okay with living in your own skin and say, you know, if I have a premium product, I'm going to command a premium price point, and don't skirt around that. Just help your buyer understand why they're paying a little bit more for a premium product. At the end of the day, I think most Amazon shoppers are there to do one thing. They want to find a product that fits their need, and they want to feel smarter for selecting that, have selected that product. So price is not always the winning factor there. They're looking for perceived value. And a lot of times value comes back to, this is a brand that understands me, that gets me. All their content is speaking to me. I want to buy it once and buy it right, and I'm willing to pay a little bit more. And if you check all those boxes for your customer, it's surprising at how much that can do for your business. The other thing is really just make sure you're emphasizing the benefits of your product. Not so much the features, and that's a hard thing to differentiate, but what's the benefit? What's the perceived value in this product? If you can communicate that very clearly to your customer base without being over-explanatory or shouty or tons of text on images, infographics, you don't want to show up, you know, in the space like we're shopping on the Home Shopping Network, no flashing dollar signs. You want to just very much speak to your base customer without alienating those secondary audiences that might be interested in your product. Actually, the partner that we have here on screen is actually a primary example of that. I spent a lot of time with Tim at Zugu Case, helping him understand that, you know, even though you've identified your primary target is a males professional age 35 to 45, Like that's okay. So you've got them already. You're speaking to them. But what if we were to introduce some younger professional women, showcase some of that diversity in your content, and over time, he's been more and more willing to listen to that as he's seeing good results from these optimizations we're doing. It's about not alienating those secondary markets because that's your expansion. That's where you get to go next as you start to
Right.
develop a brand. The other thing that I think is easily overlooked on that last slide, and it's such low-hanging fruit, is throw in some logo touches on your images where possible. Not every image, and not huge, not like 3/4 of your image, but just little touches of your logo. I mean,
Accents.
yes.
Yeah.
Just it just iterates, like you have this identity. People aren't searching for sellers on Amazon; they're searching for brands. And you might not be a known brand now, but if you do the right steps going forward, if you do everything that leans into establishing yourself as a brand, it's amazing what that does for everything else as far as PPC ad spend, growing an audience to the point where you can start considering DSP retargeting. All of these things, it starts at listing optimization, but that always is predicated with we're going to brand you as we optimize you.
Exactly.
I would like to point out, this is my favorite topic. The reason why those logo touches and the brand story are so important is because of something called the availability heuristic. Essentially, you're just trying to be remembered. And it doesn't even, like, before you ever get to the point where you're such a well-known brand that people know that you are the highest quality sports shoe like Nike, right? Before you ever even get to that, as long as you're remembered. So even if you sell like an LED dog collar and somebody is somebody that doesn't have a dog has seen your listing for whatever reason, and then one of their friends is like, I should get one of those dog collars, and then the guy, the person who saw your listings like, oh yeah, I saw one that looked really cool on Amazon. You just got a referral. That's way more powerful than any advertising. You could very well get that sale. And how do you do that? Because you've attached a unique identifier to your product, and that's why that stuff's important. Availability. It doesn't even they don't even have to remember you as the best. But moving on, we actually got a really interesting question from somebody.
What I was going to suggest is that we do have a number of questions that are coming in. As many of you heard in the beginning, is that we are, of course, recording this. I would like to probably push some of the Q&A towards the end when we can, because we've got some core material we want to get through. I want to make sure everybody understands that before we start answering those questions, because I think some of those questions are going to get answered. I don't know, Anthony, do you want to answer this one right now because it's relevant to this particular slide, or do you want to wait until later on for Q&A?
Oh, I wasn't going to answer it. I was just going to point it out to Steve, but it might actually be in one of the future slides. So you're aware that this question was there, and yes. when we hit it, the person was asking how they might be able to convey a justification for a premium price point.
And I assure you that all three of us will have a wealth of passion to throw behind the answer on that. So that's why I don't want to derail the core slides here. And I think that we can get into actual examples and questions and answers that will be, I think it's going to be a very fun Q&A here. But I would say let's go ahead and push forward on the slides, get through the core information.
One's got some layers to it. We'll tackle that in the Q&A at the end. The other important thing to note on this slide is the use of A+ content. I know Amazon has really been pushing over the past 5-6 years. A+ is the greatest thing since sliced bread. And that's really just Amazon saying we want our base of sellers to be more branded. But what we find is really just highly effective in A+ content is don't make it specific to an ASIN. Don't tell the story of your product below the fold. Just let that be image based and let it tell a great story about your brand. And it's so much more effective. We know that a lot of, the most useful thing from where I sit on this is about A+ content is it helps push those, competitor ad placements further down the screen. But I think if you're going to utilize that real estate, tell a really compelling brand story it really goes a long way in helping people feel like you're a familiar entity to them and establish that trust and say, this is a real brand that I trust and want to engage with. I'm going to give these guys a shot. I'm going to make a purchase. So that's how we like to use A+ content. We're good for the next slide. So make your content easy to skim. We know that we don't have the luxury of keeping eyeballs for too long. Yeah, just like that. So you want to really just...
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, I was trying to say, like, take a screenshot of this, you know, if you're listening in.
Absolutely. If you can communicate the benefits of your product in your images, that's ideal. Use the 5-second rule. Every image should be able to be digested in 5 seconds or less. And it should tell the story of your product in a very elegant way. Avoid extraneous text. Make sure that, you know, when you're writing your copy for the listing, that your first, like the most important benefits are your 3 first bullet points, because we know that's going to truncate on mobile. And it's what most people are going to see. So just keep those high level benefit focused. I think the rule we use is the so what rule. It's really just, all right, you start with a statement that's definitely more feature based about your product, and you keep asking yourself the question, so what, until you understand, until that distills down into what's the best 3 benefits of my products, and then you'll want to lead with those in your bullet points. We tend to write headlines that are easy to read on the skim, so you get those kind of 3 important benefits right away. And if your customer wants to read further for more information, then the rest of the text in that bullet point goes a little longer form for the purpose of indexing, but it's still telling a story and it still has a perspective about your product. And it's just speaking more to the headline of that bullet point. Keep your on text or your on image text to a minimum. I detest over explanatory images. Is you have this great lifestyle image that just really showcases the product in use. The idea of your product sometimes is more valuable than, you know, the product specs themselves. So if you take it a step further and then you take the bait and you start putting you start putting text on the image to explain what the image is about, well, now you're talking down to your customer. It turns out that most people don't react well to that. They're not there to read your images. So if you can keep text to a minimum on the images, that goes a long way to say, you know, we're an established brand. We understand who we're speaking to, and we don't need to explain our images to you. So there's just kind of a, you know, a little bit of a high road to take there. It's really easy to give into that temptation of saying, well,
yeah,
you know, we just want to tell people what they're looking at here. And it's just like, guess what, guys? You don't need to explain that to them.
If you're forcing yourself, to have text on your images probably aren't good enough.
If you have to explain it, it's not the right image. That's basically the litmus test that I use with my team all the time. And then really show, don't tell. Your images have such a priority. I mean, especially on mobile, people are going to see your images twice before they even start reading any of the text-based stuff on your listing. So really, whatever you're talking about is your main benefits in those 3 important bullet points. You want to make sure that that's showing up in your images and that those images have a purpose and they're doing a great job of illustrating those things. Video content. If it moves, it tends to convert. Now that said, there's a lot of, you know, you have to make considerations for quality of said video content. A great video is going to definitely perform better than a video. But anything you can do in your video to make it engaging, consider your thumbnails on your videos. I think that's a big mistake a lot of sellers make that I see is they have a great video, but the thumbnail that Amazon selects for them is just like the worst, least engaging thumbnail to have. So, you know, you can manipulate that. Take a screenshot of what's really going to draw the eye on that video and use that as your thumbnail instead, and you'll get much better engagement. And then I think the last thing is only utilize infographics where it's appropriate. I think that the industry as a whole really got into this whole idea of like, you got to have an infographic on every listing. you have to ask yourself, does that infographic accomplish anything, or is it just a chart that communicates information that maybe is not important to your customer? Most of what we do is we start with the ask on a listing. When we start to optimize, we want to understand the ask because it helps us understand who is your customer, what are they having a hard time understanding about your product as it is right now, as it's merchandise currently, and how can we better answer those questions? And if we can answer that with just great images that have no text on them, then that's my ideal solution there. So that's a kind of part of the inner workings of the Canopy process when it comes to listing optimization. I think we're good for the next slide. Social
Another
proof.
screenshot for you.
Social proof is huge. So this is technically a little bit of a gray area. Terms of service is a little washy on this. But I can tell you categorically, we've done hundreds of these listing optimizations, and we tend to always have a social proof image. And as long as you're direct pull quoting that from your listing feedback, you want to find like the best instances of 5-star feedback. You can truncate it beginning or end. You can lop parts off, but you can't change any of the substance there. But if you can showcase some great pieces of 5-star feedback above the fold in your images, it mitigates the likelihood that anyone's going to go down to the bottom of your page and look at your reviews. Because if you're like me, the first thing you do when you go through that review exercise is you scroll down, you start looking at the feedback. You don't ever look at the disproportionate amount of 5 stars. You look at the 2 or 3 1-star pieces of feedback, and you're basically asking yourself the question, talk me out of it, guys. Do I believe this 1-star feedback? And if you do, then, you've lost that customer. So what we like to do above the fold, try to mitigate a little bit of that conversation.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. I'll kind of make 2 comments on that. One is, the reviews, the whole like 1-star review. I think that's more of the kind of the pessimistic shopper that likes to look at the review, the negative reviews, and say, okay, what's wrong with this? Somebody else found some problem with this that I need to know about. And a lot of times it doesn't provide that information, but they still look at it. And historically, what we see from an advertising standpoint. Now, we work on 3 phases at Canopy, not just advertising, listing optimization, on Amazon advertising, off Amazon advertising, in order to get some of the powerhouses that we work with to scale up and double, triple over each year. But one of the things that we historically see is that for every negative review, a critical review, so 1-star, 2-star, that shows up on the first page of reviews for a product detail page, can drop the conversion rate by 1 to 2% each. So if you've got multiple ones showing, especially if you've gotten attacked in the past by competitors who upvoted your negative review, that is absolutely hurting your conversion rates because it is pushing people away. They want kind of an excuse to leave and keep shopping for alternatives that have a very polished result. Unfortunately, it's just one of those things you have to kind of to try to avoid or try to mitigate. But I think this is a great way of being able to say, okay, here's where we're going to actually highlight some of the benefits and the 5-star opinion within the imagery. Now, this does tie into a question that came in, Steve, regarding the last slide that also applies to this slide. And that is, we're talking about 5-second rules. We're talking about being very succinct as far as trying not to use text on images. And yet we've shown 2 examples where we are using text. And I want to clarify that because part of our process is to really dive in and identify what are some of the pain points, what are the pros and cons that shoppers are finding in reviews, in using the product, in order to determine, is there specific information that absolutely has to be there that you cannot take out? Most brands put into their product images, in their product listings, extra text that they think showcases some kind of value or feature or something like that really is unnecessary. What we're doing here with our creative services team is being very intentional about, if we use text, it's because it has got to be there, and it's something specifically that target audience needs to know and is specifically looking for.
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. So text is necessary to communicate some benefits. If you can do it without text, that's ideal. But that being said, if it's important enough to show up in your ask on the listing, if it's something we need to get out in front of, if it's a positioning thing, if it's a differentiator thing in the space where, you know, your competitors are all much cheaper, but they don't have 2/3 of the features that your product does, you need to start to utilize that space to set yourself apart from the competition. So everything, you know, if I can get away with no text and an image, that's the most successful image. If we need to be a little further explanatory, if we need some high level benefit there, we're going to go that route. Now these are just samplings of, you know, 3 images from a listing that's going to showcase, you know, 7 to 9 image slots. So there's likely more text on these examples than, you know, if you were to take the whole thing as a whole, it wouldn't be so text heavy. But it is important sometimes to go high level and make sure you're communicating those benefits across.
I would like to make a point on that. This is a tip for creative in general, not just on imagery, but in copywriting too. Anytime you add words of any kind to anything, the question always needs to be, does this help? So that very much so is the case with text on imagery. Does it help? Does the addition of these words help? And the same thing with your product descriptions and your bullets. Like, do the words I just added actually help? Or is it fluff? Is it in the way? Is it taking away from the message? And if you just look at it from that perspective, then you only use it when it actually will be beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely, Anthony. The approach we take with my team is every single image we create, we have to ask ourselves, what is the point of this image, and does it accomplish that? If there's no point, then why are we then the image shouldn't exist. And, you know, is this successful in communicating that idea is kind of our bar of quality to make sure that everything has a point, a purpose. The real estate Amazon gives you is very valuable. You know, you have 7 to 9 slots to fill. It's up to you what you're doing with those slots. And it's really, you know, the great, I think, equalizer on Amazon is that, you know, you've got giant brands like a Samsung or an Apple or, you know, et cetera, et cetera. They're going to get the same, you know, for the most part, the same real estate on a product detail page as, you know, Susie up the street who's just selling some stuff out of her garage. So in that regard, it's a pretty fair platform. It's all about how you utilize that space. You know, here's what you've got to work with. How are you using it? And branding always tends to be the best answer to establish yourself for the long game on Amazon. Consistency is really important. We know just by the way that eye tracking data suggests that people digest your product detail page, they're not looking at any individual component of the page, especially on mobile. It's a very quick, like, glance look. And the more cohesive those elements of the detail page, your images, you know, speak back to the bullet points, speak back to, you know, the title, all of those things. If they're very cohesive, you have a much more, you have a better chance of keeping that customer engaged and encouraging them to buy and try your product than if those things are all kind of disparate and at different levels and they're not cohesive. They look at it as a poster for your product, not as, you know, just your images or just your bullet points or just your descriptive text or just your title. It all has to work together, and that leans, you know, again, that comes back to branding. And
that also helps with availability. If it's consistent, it's easier to remember you. If you're not consistent with your messaging and with your, you know, brand colors and those logo touches, then it's going to be harder for you to be recalled in memory.
For sure. They want to know that you put in the work, and it all just comes with trust. Because everybody goes to Amazon with their guard up saying, you know, everyone understands what a saturated space Amazon is. And, you know, you might be buying from Susie up the street, or you might be buying from Samsung from, you know, their corporate high rise. Those are two different things. Those are two different, like, customer experiences, but you can make them much more similar if you lean into branding as Susie up the street. And it goes a long ways in encouraging that trust, which is, I think, the key component to success on Amazon. And just to get back to the slide, don't state competing benefits, or don't state benefits that don't need to be stated. If it's already implied,
Right.
you don't talk down to your customer, because that's the best way to alienate a potential customer. People don't want to feel less informed by the experience that they're having with your detail page. They want to feel like you get them, you understand them, they're in your corner. They want to feel like they made the smart decision regardless of price point. That is kind of the intrinsic value of this interaction for a customer, is they just want to feel like they made the best possible choice for themselves. And a lot of times the answer to all of that is great branding.
Right.
So that's actually a
It's-
psychological principle, which is really interesting. But communication in general is engaged with more and enhanced when you trust the person you're communicating with enough to connect the dots, right? So if you spell it all out, then it can come across as patronizing. But even if it doesn't, even if they're not offended by it, the truth is you're losing out on the potential engagement by giving people just enough to where they can connect the dots, they can piece it together. And that's another reason why you should avoid putting text on your images if it's not necessary. A lot of times you can tell that story in the image and let them let it be implied through their eyes what that feeling, what that emotion, what that benefit will be. And that'll actually engage the customer literally on a subconscious level more with your listing and with your brand.
Yep. Engage, don't
for sure.
franchise. Talking down to your customers is never going to be the path to gaining that
You
customer.
can, yeah, and for everybody who's listening on this and trying to piece it all together, you can kind of see is that there is kind of a little bit of a fine line, right? It's something you could certainly implement off of what we have been teaching today. But what we're trying to impart primarily is most brands, I'm not saying you are specifically, but most brands are doing it wrong currently. They're using an outdated model, something where they have learned to copy competitors, and what that has created is an environment, a platform where everybody's copying each other. The images all look the same, the title looks the same, the bullet points look the same, the A plus looks the same. And what we're trying to do is have you incorporate changes to your product listings that are going to help separate your product from your competitors' products so that it stands out, so that shoppers can see there is a difference, there's a contrast. And sometimes the more polarized you can get, what we're saying is don't just blend in, differentiate yourself, stand out. Even if you've got the exact same product, and some of you have heard me say this again and again recently, even if you have the exact same product as 10 other competitors, you can find the benefits and communicate that to a shopper that the competitors failed to communicate. What's in it for me? Answer me the question, what's in it for me, to the shopper, and you can have your product stand out from your competition in your images, in your main image, in your title, in your bullet points, in your A+ content. All of these are opportunities. We have a priority as far as where we think you should spend most of your time on these, but each of these is a way for you to differentiate. And that's going to be a drum that you're going to hear me be pounding all the time, is set yourself apart from your competition. Differentiate. Even if your product is exactly the same, from the same manufacturer, the same color, same materials, everything, you can find things that are different, that are unique, that are where you can highlight the specific benefit to that shopper that nobody else is doing. That's going to help you set yourself apart.
And then real quick, I just want to mention, I'm seeing questions come in the chat. When we get to the Q&A, I'm actually writing them down. So we will answer everything. No worries.
That's a lot of writing. All right. I think we've kind of wrapped up this slide here. Yes, Steve?
Let's move on.
All right. So
one more point of consideration, though, to the whole branding idea is consider your packaging. Brian, you just kind of made me think of it, because we do see so many sellers with look-alike products that are likely sourced from the same exact manufacturers, packaging becomes everything there. It's the first step in branding. It's a real consideration. I mean, just think about yourself and your own personal shopping habits. I can tell you, maybe I'm different than everybody else, but I've many times bought a product for a premium price point just simply because the packaging was a little bit nicer on the one that I ended up settling on than it was on the one that was $4 cheaper. Um, in, Unbeknownst to me, they were maybe from the same exact manufacturer, but packaging is a real important consideration to make. Because when I think about it from my team's perspective, really the encouragement is a great main image.
Right.
That's the initial kind of, you show up in the thumbnail
Without a doubt.
with everybody else. You need to encourage that initial click, and that initial click is wasted if you don't have great content once they land on your detail page. But if you do have great content, you need that initial click to get people to have eyeballs on it. And a lot of times that comes back to great packaging.
Right. No, for sure. And kind of a comment on that main image, of course, is that main image is not to communicate as much information as you can to the shopper. You don't have that kind of relationship with the shopper yet. That main image in search results, its primary job is to just grab the eyeball, grab the attention of the shopper in the first place, so they even see your listing, see your title before they even take, because otherwise they're just going to scan right past you. So I can go in. That's a topic I can actually go into a lot more discussion on. But let's kind of shift gears a little bit and talk about how, or kind of wrap this a little bit and say, the brand halo that we're talking about, that we've made recommendations to you, that you screenshotted, you took notes, as far as here's some things that you need to be changing this year, this month, this week in your products in order to stand out from your competition, in order to express the value, the benefits to the shoppers, to really point out to them succinctly. Succinctly is the key word there. Succinctly, what's in it for me if I buy your product. There's a lot of pieces that you can change, but the effect of this, as far as why you should actually do all this work, because it is going to be some work. Why should you actually do this, create this brand halo effect around your products? Why does it matter to your business? Now, some of the things that it's going to have an effect on is going to certainly be your conversion rate, your overall conversion rate, your advertised conversion rate. Your advertising conversion rate, if you can increase your advertised conversion rate, of course, that's going to drop your A cost and allow you some more flexibility to be more aggressive on your ads, be able to compete better with some of your competitors, compete better with competitors. There's a novel sentence. So that you can be more aggressive in keyword targeting ads, product targeting ads, especially. This is something that I constantly am coaching on, and that is you've got to get your conversion rate up to the point where it makes sense to run things like product targeting ads. Sponsored display, sponsored product, sponsored brand, product targeting ads don't work as well if you've got a low conversion rate, because you may attract them, and if you don't convert it, it gets expensive. So increasing conversion rate absolutely impacts the ability for your advertising to be successful, and usually it doesn't take that much. Certainly, it's going to increase sales. Sales are going to also reflect, of course, over an organic rank. I know there's some chatter going on in the community about like, advertising doesn't impact organic rank. I'm calling BS on that. I'm sorry, because I see it every single day still, is we can move the needle on organic rank through aggressive, very specific advertising. And so part of that has to do with advertising intentionally on highest converting assets, whether that's products, whether that is targets in your advertising, that can move the needle on organic ranking and improve that. Of course, social proof with reviews. The more conversions you get, you're likely to get more reviews, of course, and that's going to help you social proof, which is going to solve some of the other questions as far as creating, doubt as far as did somebody else actually try this before me. Ultimately, some of you are looking. We've worked with a number of partners who have gone into exit mode, where they want to be acquired by a bigger, by an acquisition house or an investor. And we can certainly help with that, of course, but a lot of what we do naturally goes into that future exit, whether that's 6 months from now, whether that's 6 years from now. Ultimately, you want to continue to build toward that so you can get the highest possible valuation for your brand, for your company, as you can. And you've got to start that with what we're talking about today, and that is listing optimization and creating that brand halo. All right. Anthony and Steve, did you want to add anything to this piece of it here as far as the effect? What am I missing?
You're not missing anything, but I'll add on just a little bit to the conversion piece. Because of what I do at Canopy, conversion rate is really, I think, the most overlooked metric in Amazon. It matters so much more than I think any seller gives it credit for. Everyone is inclined to go out and chase more traffic. They think more sessions means I'm going to make more money, and that is true to a degree, but it's fundamentally flawed. You shouldn't be concerned about getting more traffic. You should be concerned about what you're doing with the traffic you already have. And that's really where conversion rate comes in. Amazon, as a company, has one job really, and it's just to showcase a product that's likely to convert on a set of organic search terms. So you've got two ways to be there. You can pay to be placed there, through a PPC strategy. You can bid on those terms, you can get there. But if you're not converting, if they click into your page and the assets are not great, they don't feel branded, they don't feel cohesive, there's no trust there, you're just paying Amazon for the privilege of driving traffic around Amazon, and they'll gladly take your money. But if you convert really high, you can spend a lot less to be placed there, because Amazon really just wants to showcase products that are likely to convert to their customers based on those terms, put it into that search bar. Because every time they make a sale, they're taking their commission off from that. So that's the two ways that Amazon's operating internally. And if you can fit that model as a highly converting product, you're much better off than spending a ton of money on advertising to drive traffic to something that's not likely going to grab that sale.
I want to piggyback on that too, because Steve's whole point, your whole point was worrying about optimizing the traffic that you currently have. But optimization at this level and conversions impacts everything, including traffic sources. Let me give you an example. A lot of people don't know this, but Amazon, one of the reasons that Amazon cares so much about how well your listing converts is because they care about how it shows up on Google. And the reason they do that is because they know Google tracks your conversions too from their website, which means that if you are optimized and you're converting at a level higher than your competitors, you will not only be shown in more places by Amazon, but you may even also find yourself shown in more places around the internet as a whole, because conversions is what everybody cares about, like at least the owners of these platforms. So that can impact the amount of traffic you get as well.
Absolutely.
Very good. Now, so it's kind of tie this in too. It certainly is as wrap up as we obviously are saying here. So many of you are already aware, of course. Like I've got a strong history from the Amazon advertising, PPC standpoint, DSP, all these, right? And that is something that I've been a strong proponent on, is using the advertising to your advantage, getting it correctly done. And doing it correctly. Obviously I've put a lot of content and training out there, and I'm live regularly, and I'm constantly involved in the community in order to promote how to do the advertising. But I can guarantee you is we see it again and again where if you dump a whole bunch of money into advertising, that's not going to fix a bad listing. I'm sure you've heard that before, is you're not going to fix a bad product, right? However, you can put the best foot forward on even a bad product, shine it, if you will. But ultimately, if you can increase the conversion rate, creating the brand halo, doing the main image, setting up the main image correctly for product differentiation, setting up an enticing title so that you draw that shopper into your product listing, using the first 3 bullets at least in order to make sure that they understand the value, the benefit, what's in it for me if I buy your product, and then supporting that with those who really want to know, as in the 20% who really want to dig in and get more information. They're going to dig into things like the videos. They're going to dig into the other images. They're going to dig into the A+ content. Those are all opportunities for you to simply just reinforce what you've already said. Like, this is the best product you could possibly get. Here's what's in it for you if you own this product. And there we can talk about things like, the 3 videos that you'd put into a product listing, what's in the A plus content, what's in, how do you do the image format, those kinds of things. We can discuss that during Q&A. But I want you to understand, from my point of view, advertising is secondary. Secondary, hear me on this. Advertising is secondary to getting your brand halo and your listing optimization done correctly, right? Now, obviously, this is something where we are certainly sponsored by Canopy Management. That is the agency, right? So I want to make sure that we're kind of going through this one last time here, and before we get into Q&A and really start talking about your specific examples, your specific questions. So stick with me here. But one of the reasons that we do what we do is we know specifically, we work with a number of clients. We refer to them as partners because we are in it together as far as their growth strategy and their growth plan. But we want to make sure that they are successful. And one of the things that we've learned with working with so many clients, with so many brands on Amazon, is it's not simply just a case of getting one thing right. You can't simply just get advertising correct and have that work. You can't simply just turn on DSP advertising and have it just magically work. There are some exceptions, of course, but what we find is most brands come in and say, we've done everything that we're supposed to be doing, and we'll come in and say, yeah, but you didn't do them in the correct order. All right, hold on, wait a minute, that doesn't sound correct. That's part of our audit. That usually that conversation comes into play. We have learned through not only trial and error, but working with not just hundreds of millions, but we're over $1 billion now in revenues on Amazon. We have learned the consistent pattern that we see with those brands who actually exceed, that grow to the point where they get beyond the 30,000, 50,000, 100,000. They get to the 100,000 per month sales range, and then they skyrocket. I mean, just launch from 100,000 per month and start getting up into the millions per month. What we consistently see on that is the sequence. The sequence being what we call the Canopy Accelerator, and that is starting out, of course, with the proper creative services, the proper listing optimization, dialing in this brand halo that we've been teaching you about today, getting the main image correct and differentiated from your product, from your competitors, getting your product title to not talk to the search engine, but talk to the consumer. Actually get them enticed in order to click through to your listing to learn more about your product. Setting up at least your first 3 bullet points, so that they understand within 5 seconds each what each of those benefits are that does something for them. What's in it for me, right? Solve my problem, and I'll care about what you're selling. Reinforcing that, if they're into images, if they like the videos, reinforcing that by being succinct. 5-second rule again on the images. On the videos are obviously going to go longer, but there's specific ones that we talk about as far as 3 videos that we recommend that go into each product listing. And then, of course, supporting all of that with the polished Amazon wants and likes to showcase. And that, of course, is your A+ content. Now, Canopy does have a track record. We're not afraid to just throw that out there and say, look, we have, as far as our listing optimization, we have a historical average, just an average of increasing conversion rate by 38% on the product listings that we work with. Some will do less, some will do a lot more. Some will do phenomenal numbers, a lot more. Some of them are a little bit slower to move up to, to higher levels, up to 40, 50, 60% conversion rate, but we get it there. That is part of the level of experience and quality and expertise that Steve and his team obviously aligns. And Steve, I'll let you kind of talk a little bit more about that, but I wanted to make sure that people were reminded, here's actually how you get a hold of our team to have that initial conversation. Alexandria, I'm sure, is probably already put into the chat, thecanopymanagement.com/webinar-offer. We're not actually offering anything other than to have a discussion with you, to see if it's a good fit, to tell you what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, what you're doing horribly wrong in some cases. And if you want to take that information and run with it, awesome. If you want to have our team, if it makes sense for both of us to work together, even better, right? Because obviously that's something you can take off your plate. Steve, Anthony, you want to add anything to this piece before we jump into the Q&A section?
I'll jump in and just say that, I'm really proud of what we've built here at Canopy as far as the listing optimization process, how a byproduct of that is branding. 38% is, it's hard to really get some competitor data out there that's solid and reliable, but I can't imagine any other process is doing better than that right now. And I'm just really proud of what we built. I love working and meeting with new partners. Um, there's always opportunity in every listing is the way that we look at things. We did put
Yeah.
together on our website a pretty great little kind of return on investment listing optimization calculator. It's on canopymanagement.com. Pretty easy to find under the listing optimization tab. That's in the service of really just helping you understand what a lift in your conversion rate might mean for your, at the ASIN level on a product that you're looking at. Does this make sense? Does the investment warrant? Is the investment warranted by the results it could produce? So it's a nice little tool. Really happy with
I see.
it. So please check it out.
Yeah, Alexandria actually put a link into that optimization calculator. Thank you
Awesome.
very much. Yeah, so both how to get in touch with our team to have a discussion, and also how to just check out the listing optimization calculator. It's pretty simple to kind of see the reading.
I want to contribute something, and actually this is fun because I'm going to add a little controversy to this. I disagree with something that Steve said, but it's in the service of my endorsement of him. Let me explain. There was a point in the presentation where Steve said that buyers that come to Amazon are skeptical. They have their guard up because they understand that they're buying from all sorts of sellers. But I want to contend that and say, I think that buyers are not skeptical and their guard is down because they don't know who they're buying from other than Amazon, and they trust Amazon. But because of that, I think it's all the more important for people to take advantage of the subliminal opportunities that they have. To explain, there was actually a well-known study done once upon a time. This was a behavioral study done by a university whose name I can't remember. They found a nonprofit and they were sending out solicitations for donations. And what they did was they basically tested the envelope. They tested like whether or not they included a return envelope or not. They tested like the font size and the location of certain text points in the return slip. They tested all this stuff. And the thing that actually garnered the most and largest donations, crazy, is when they added a high, like a premium card stock insert and an expensive envelope. For some reason, those little things, the expensive envelope and the premium card stock insert, caused donations and donation amounts to skyrocket. Why is that? Because humans are weird. The point that I'm trying to make with explaining that is that we have the ability to affect people, very limited amount of space to affect people on this subconscious level. And therefore you should be taking advantage of it. And my endorsement for Steve is the fact that he's one of the incredibly few amount of people I have ever met that understands this almost on an innate level. When we talk about stuff, we agree with almost everything that each other's saying because we both understand these principles. And so I have deep respect for him for that, because there's not a lot of people that you're going to find understand those principles. So that was my endorsement and my controversy, all wrapped up in one.
Thanks, Anthony. You're a pretty easy guy to get along with. I can say that part of that will move back to what I said previously about packaging. Sometimes it's not about your product, it's the idea of your product, especially on Amazon, especially if you are sourcing from the same place that a lot of other third-party sellers are sourcing from. And the way to set yourself apart from them is really call it something, give it a brand, give it an identity, find a customer that needs that thing and speak to that customer and be inclusive in that conversation, encourage more people to be interested in that product. So it does come back to trust from where I'm sitting. Yes, Amazon is a very customer-centric, friendly place. I mean, if you have any issues with anything that you buy at Amazon, Amazon's just going to tell that seller to refund you anyway. So they're pretty apt to, so there's the trust in that regard, but being readily identifiable, being someone that a brand that your potential customer can identify with. Again, it goes back to like just being recognizable in a sea of competitive products. That familiarity concept that you introduced earlier on is essential. It's a psychological innate trigger, and I think people are really driven by saying, oh, I want to make the best choice for myself in any of these engagements online. Anytime I'm buying something online, I want to feel like I got the best possible deal. That's not always the lowest possible price. That's sometimes I spend a little bit more to buy from this cool brand that I think I like because they get me. So if you can help those, if you can speak conversationally in the listing content, that's ideal from where I sit. It should not be written solely for the algorithm. Indexing is great.
Yep.
Let me qualify that with indexing is great, but it's only great insofar as it's been contextualized to relevant and convertible traffic. It's another big mistake I see a lot of sellers make over time, especially as their space gets more competitive. They start to panic, and then what they do is look for more traffic sources without optimizing anything. So then they just start adding more tertiary reach keywords to the back end, and now they're starting to show up in places where they probably shouldn't, because all they're doing is showing up on terms that aren't likely to convert a sale on that product. So make sure it's relevant and convertible traffic. Not all traffic is equal.
Yep.
You don't want the noise. You want stuff. You want interested parties coming to your detail page, and then you want great content when they get there.
100%. And that's the reason why optimization is an art and a science. I mean, plain and simple. But I think we have a handful of questions that we should definitely get into, especially while we're waiting on Brian to join us again. I think
I didn't even notice he dropped off.
I just saw Zoom crashed. Okay. So let's start with what's the importance of emphasizing being a domestic family company? We use part of the A+ content to show where we are and that we're a family company. So we'll start with what you think about that, Steve.
I think that's huge. I think that's exactly the right thing to do. If you can tell a little further story, like, yes, everyone has a family, and some families start companies. If you can go a little bit further into the creation of that company or what brought it about, I think that's a more interesting story for people to understand. But any instance where you can humanize yourself as a seller, it's super key. It's a reason why in that Zugu case example on the slides, he actually wasn't using that image, that great image of him and his son laying on the grass. It was actually in his email signature to me on all the emails when we first started engaging. I'm like, dude, that's a winning image. Like, that just says so much about who you are and what's important to you, and it puts a face to a brand. And I think so any effort to showcase that you're a family company and that you come from a place, people love that, especially the domestic thing. People want to know that products are made in the USA. You can put it in your text and say, hey, made in the USA, or you can tell a compelling brand story about how your company was started, where you guys are at, how, it means a lot to your family. And that's going to go so much further, especially with, millennials and more discerning buyers who have options. Amazon's not the only place to buy stuff.
Yep.
So if you're going to be there and you want to be there for the long term, you need to show up as more than, you're using Amazon as a platform for your brand, or you're just selling things on Amazon. So it goes back to that. Do you want an Amazon hobby or an Amazon business? And I think most people are in it for the business.
Yep.
So definitely a great idea.
I definitely second that. Humanizing your brand is big. And, I don't have anything to add to that. I'll just provide an example. Anybody that follows me knows that I'm pretty active on social media. In TikTok land, if you look at the brands that are selling super well and growing and thriving, they're usually the ones that give you the behind the scenes look. Why is that? Because, like I said, humans are weird, but we like that. We like the humanization behind it. We feel like we draw a connection right there. So yeah, if you tell people, that you, not just that you are a family business, but tell them about your family, people will connect with that. Okay. So the next question, I'm struggling on how to convey the idea that my product is higher quality than my competitors. I've worked really hard to convey it in my listing, but it's hard to convey in the pictures. This should be a premium price product, but I'm struggling to get there. Most of my competitors sell it for much cheaper. What do you think?
Branding, 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 branding.
So are you suggesting that rather than tackle these are the reasons why this product is better, you could tackle just the fact that you as a brand are more, I guess, relatable, connectable. So basically what you're saying is if you can't win on an exact comparison, you can win by connecting with the audience.
Thank you for so elegantly illustrating everything that we're trying to talk about here. Yes. If you're speaking to your audience, you're the right choice for them. If, all other things aside, if you've got an equivalent product and it's really hard to showcase the nuance of the details there, it's really important to lean into the branding or the idea that you understand, like this seller, this brand gets me, goes so much further than, well, we're better than the competitor because XYZ feature. And before you know it, you've got all this text on your images it just feels desperate at that point. You just start like throwing rocks at competitors, which is, never a great look. We have done images in the past where it's like our product, like fully in focus, looking awesome. The competitors kind of out of focus, soft, grainy. Like the idea is there. We're throwing rocks in a subtle way. But aside from that, I think it's really just believing in yourself and your product and believing in the worthwhileness of establishing yourself as a brand and starting to speak to your customer in a more meaningful way is going to get you there faster than, just getting into the fight on the features and the price point.
Yeah, I agree. And then to add to that though, yes, we can. To add to that, I want to also mention, and this is in regards to your last example of showing a comparison. That's actually a psychological advertising principle that has been tested, tried, and true. If you can show a comparison, usually that works. Basically, that serves as proof in the mind that your product does what it says it's going to. And the most effective way to show that your product does what it says it's going to, aside from just demonstrating it, is to show a comparison shot. That doesn't mean you have to drag a specific competitor. Literally, it can be the competition, ours, and then like just show that your sponge, absorbs more, right? Like whatever it is that you're selling, the equivalent of that metaphor. That's actually a super, super effective way to convey that you're premium. So it does work. Okay. The next question was on the social proof types of images. Is it better to have the social proof in A+, or like down at the bottom in A+, or up in your primary images?
Above the fold, primary images. 2 reasons. Not everyone's going to look at your A+ content. And if you're doing a great job above the fold, then hopefully they don't. What we tend to see is most people are just looking at that a second or two at the most, and they're only checking there to see if it looks consistent with what they saw above the fold, and it's a brand trust check-in. It's just saying, okay, well, these guys did the work, basically. I trust them. The other reason why it's important not to put that in your A+ content is the rules are a little bit different in A+. The community guidelines that rule A+ content are comically more stringent than what they are above the fold. So you can get away with that image above the fold as long as it's direct pull quotes. One thing to consider with doing that above the fold too is we love those when they showcase lifestyle, and lifestyle usually means happy human beings engaging with your product. Try to avoid having just as many quotes as people in that image, because then it can be construed as this person said this thing, and that's the person in the image. So either have 3 quotes and 2 people, or 2 quotes and 4 people. Just try to make them not line up, and you should be good. We've had no issues. It is a little technically afoul of Amazon TOS guidelines, but nothing has been suppressed for it. I have tried to submit similar types of images in A+ content modules. They always get rejected, so don't waste your time.
There you go. I have nothing to add to that. So we'll move on to the next question. What?
Actually,
Mhm.
sorry, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
All right. I am fighting Zoom all of a sudden, so thank you, Zoom. But one of the things I was going to add is that in my coaching sessions, there's two questions that I typically have students or clients ask their manufacturer in order to help with differentiating their product. First question is simply just to ask the manufacturer, what is the most expensive step in the manufacturing process, not including packaging or shipping? What's the most expensive step? What's the most time-consuming step? Even if you're selling the exact same product as somebody else and they're selling it for $10 cheaper, you can still lead with, you're basically coming in and you're pointing out something that nobody else is pointing out about your product that you may have even just dismissed because you sourced the product 5 years ago and didn't even think about it. But honestly, you may not even know yourself as far as what is the most expensive, what's the most time consuming step in the process, and highlight the fact. If they had to churn some ingredient 5 extra times or an extra half an hour, point out.
Sorry, you're phasing in and out, but that was such a good, like, that's a beautiful example. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, it's astounding to me how many times we work with sellers who don't even really understand what it is about their product that makes it so unique, or have just a really hard time explaining that. Communicating that to your customers is not always easy to do, especially if you don't have an established kind of brand footing or standpoint or a voice established. And I feel like that's where the art form comes in that you spoke of, Anthony. Like, yes, there is the science and it all starts there. That research is just fundamental to my team and understanding, like, what's the context of this space, who's performing really well, where are the opportunities, where are we positioned in this space. We can run all the research from that point on, formulaically, but bringing an identity to the brand that may or may not exist as we start to engage with a partner is where the art form comes in. It's really about understanding that niche at another level and then really figuring out how we're speaking to that particular clientele in a very inclusive way to say, we're going to speak your language, but we also want to catch the people that are also tangentially interested in this type of product without alienating them because we're being a little too kind of boys club on a particular product. So
that was a great tip from Brian. So basically, communicate with your supplier, find out what makes your product awesome, and then give that to Steve and his team, and they will turn it into magic. Okay, next question. What is an example of a benefit that is already implied? A benefit that doesn't need to be stated. So we were talking about imagery that doesn't need text that conveys a benefit. Can you give an example?
Any image that showcases your product in use with happy human beings living their best life, the easier you can make it for your customer to see themselves in your images and their life improved by owning your product, the better. So if you just show that product in use, and I mean, sometimes it's trickier than others, without having to say, vibrates at 26 gigawatts and yada, yada, like, no one cares. They just want to see the end result. And that's just happy, smiling them.
So to give a specific example, one of the slides showed like the UV teeth whitener. So I'll give you a specific example without actually knowing whether or not this image exists on their listing. An image, for example, if your target demographic was like young men, an image of a guy smiling, pulling it out of his mouth, about to speak to a woman conveys a subconscious benefit that this is going to make you more confident, happier with your appearance, make it easier for you to communicate with the opposite sex. You see, all of that was in an image, no text necessary. I hope that answers that question.
Absolutely.
All right. So the next question, well, it's more of a statement. Another hard point is explaining a scientific principle or how your product works so much better, especially when it's something that's overlooked in common discourse or dogma. That was a little, the message there was a little hard to read, but I think essentially what that's stating is like, how do you differentiate your level of quality for like a commodity product? Like if you're selling a garlic press, you know, it seems to be a hard point to demonstrate that yours is better when this is something that would most likely be overlooked.
That I think goes back to the show don't tell. Probably if it's a very complex idea that you're trying to get across, the video is probably going to be the way to go. If you can cut together a really great 30-second high level differentiating video, that's much more digestible than, you know, showcase, like wasting 3 of your image slots on highly technical diagrams and charts that people are, you know, some people are going to digest that and they're going to be interested in that and all that nuance. Some people just want to understand the benefit. So I would prioritize that as a video spot on your detail page and just do a good job of illustrating those things in an interesting way that's very, like, you know, if you can showcase the differences in motion, then it's sometimes a lot more digestible than 3 different images that convey that same information, and your detail page is better off for it, I think.
Yep. Or back to your original point, Steve, use that video time to convey how your brand itself is better rather than just the product, right? Like,
yeah. It all depends
on like 3 videos. I usually recommend that first one, which is that 15-second benefit lifestyle image showcase in 15 seconds. That's typically the ones we use for sponsor brand video. Second one I typically do is somebody actually using the product, so they understand the size of it. How, you know, how does this piece go together? It's not like an unboxing. It's like, here's the actual product in use by somebody, right? Not necessarily like a manufactured demonstration. With somebody, it's kind of like a lifestyle video. Can be brief, you know, less than a minute. Somebody's just holding it, using it. That obviously conveys a huge amount of information that people will feel comfortable. It's like, okay, when I have that product, I understand the size of it, how it's going to feel, you know, what it's going to look like around, how I'm going to actually use it, where this plug-in goes, all that kind of stuff. The third video, that branding video, that's where you can showcase, look, we do all these things more than other brands because we care more. You know, we constantly communicate with our clients. We constantly work with manufacturers to improve materials that we use. That's your chance to really expand on the quality of your brand in that third video. And you've got 3 videos that you can put into each image or into each product listing.
Yeah, Brian, I love brand story based videos for the reason that they are very much, they serve a greater purpose. They really, it's more bang for your buck. If you're gonna produce one video and it needs to be a really great video, invest in a brand story video, really hit all those levels, because you can throw that on your detail page. You can cut it down and use that as an ad placement. You can also utilize that as a really attractive tile on your storefront for Amazon. So if I were to invest in just one of those videos, I would say tell a generic brand story, because you can put it on every one of your detail pages. So if you've got a huge catalog and it doesn't make sense to say, I'm going to invest the time and the money to create 300 different unique product videos, that's a good thing to do over time. But if you just want to get off the ground and run right away, put together a great brand story video, because you can utilize that in so many places.
Word. Okay. This next question, I'm going to answer it. How can Google track your Amazon conversions? Can you please clarify? So here's the thing. The technical aspects of this are fuzzy on me. I really don't know. The only reason that I say that is once upon a time, I was able to see a leaked wiki document from Amazon that was a wiki specifically for, so you know how bigger vendors have Amazon rep? The wiki was specifically for those Amazon reps, and then the department that they have that specifically exists for the purpose of optimizing pages for Google. So Amazon appears, according to this wiki that I got to see, to be totally invested in every single page of their website ranking on Google. So they care about the content, the load speed. Like they literally time every page to see the load speeds, and then they figure out how to reduce load speeds because they know that that matters to Google. And one of the sections that they talked about was that they care about conversions because that also matters to Google. They actually have their reps like follow a step-by-step guide on convincing their vendors who need it to optimize their listing and help them figure out how. And I mean, this is on like high level, like Amazon vendor level, because when they're stepping in and going, we'll help you with this process, but you need to do it. And part of that checklist is that it makes it very apparent that they're incredibly concerned with the conversion rate. So either they're sharing that information willingly with Google, this has something to do with their retargeting, or they're specifically talking about ads that they're placing on Google converting. I don't know, because again, I'm not privy to the technicals. I just know that the wiki made it very clear that part of the reason they care about conversions is because they know that Google will care. So, moving right along. Number 7. So do you suggest featuring your packaging in one of your images? Going back to the packaging conversation we had.
Depends on how good your packaging is. To be honest, if it sucks, don't showcase it. Showcase only the best things about your product, but that's where I think there's a lot of opportunity to differentiate yourself. Is think about branding, think about packaging, and how that supports that whole thing. Sometimes you can be a goon like me and buy the thing for more money that comes in a nicer box because you feel like you're worth it, and it justifies the purchase more readily for you. And that's really what Amazon customers or any customers looking to do, is have a narrative very handy to themselves, really, to say, this is how I justify spending this money I just spent. You got to give them the story to work with there. If you don't, they're going to have a harder time justifying the purchase. You know, they might just be randomly buying, but a better chance is they're going to go find a place that makes it easier for them to justify the purchase rather than your detail page.
I like that. So that breaks it down pretty easily. Should you include the packaging in your images? Yes, if you've actually purposefully designed good packaging. Otherwise, no. All right. Next question. And this is a good one, Brian, this is probably for you more than anything, but if you have a dead listing, no sales in like 365 days, right? Totally dead. Would you try to recover this listing with optimization and then ads, or would you relist with a new ASIN and then do the optimization and ads from there?
Yeah, I guess it depends on why it became a dead listing. Did it become a dead listing because Amazon de-indexed the product and it doesn't show up in search, and none of your target terms are even indexed in the first place? You know, that certainly has happened quite a bit in the last year or so. If it was because you had an extended product outage, where you're basically out of stock for an extended period of time, I'd just reboot that same product and just, you're relaunching at this point. If there's some other reason, like I mentioned earlier, where you had indexing, you were ranked, and you lost it all, and you don't know why, that's probably a dead product. A product listing, and you're going to fight with Amazon for 2 months to try to get it restored, and you may, or you could just like, okay, let me, either pull the inventory or, and then relist it. Unfortunately, that's kind of a hard Band-Aid to pull off, but that's like a duct tape one. But at the same time, we've seen both. We've seen both situations, but in either case, you're basically talking about a relaunch of a product as if you had introduced it for the first time.
Yeah. So optimizing ads is important. You're saying whether or not to scrap the listing all depends on whether or not the ASIN is undamaged. So like
exactly.
If indexing is still happening and Amazon hasn't flagged you for anything weird, and like it's then that means there's nothing wrong with the ASIN in the listing. Go ahead and just do the steps you need to do to relaunch. But
yeah,
if it's
we saw this,
start over.
Yeah, we saw both occur where, especially in the PPE marketplace, face masks and hand sanitizer and that kind of stuff, where there's just so many competing listings, hundreds of thousands of competing listings, that Amazon simply just doesn't choose to index all of them. It's just, all right, you're not a big enough of a seller on this one. In those cases, we've had some success in cases as far as like narrowing it down and saying, okay, let me just find a very specific product niche. Exactly what we've been talking about up to this point is, and what Steve was talking about before, is you really have to go in and identify who your target audience and really get laser focused on a very small specific audience. Stop trying to go for this broad audience of, something I'm going to rank on page one, whatever. Try to rank on page one for, you may have to go for 5 and 6 word keyword phrases first, get those tackled, get that specific, and then start bringing it up to 4-word keyword phrases. And just continue to build that foundation up in order to regain that traction if you're in a high competition situation. You may have some old data, but if what you were saying is true, is if it's been basically non-existent for over a year, you're not ranked for anything. You're probably not even indexed for anything, and so you're relaunching that product most likely altogether.
Yep. Okay. So the next 2 questions are actually related, so we can answer them at the same time. What if your company is in the USA and your products are imported? Do you say you're a domestic company, or better to leave it out altogether? And the next one was, what can you do if your products are made in China like most sellers? So this is referring to when we were talking about one of the brand points as an example was that the products are domestically made and how people care about knowing that it's made in the USA.
Yeah.
I'll start that off by putting in my 2 cents there, that if your product is domestically made, that just gives you like an extra point of differentiation that you should use. Why would you hide that? But if it's not, obviously that doesn't matter. 90% of the stuff people buy on Amazon isn't made domestically. So
Right.
Clearly leaving that out is not a big deal, but I'll let you guys weigh in on that.
Yeah, what Amazon is asking for is, what is the origin of the product? If you have it manufactured in another country, that country is the point of origin for that country, and you do need to actually state that. As far as the made in USA, I've seen some sensitivity by Amazon where if you actually try to put made in USA in the title, sometimes they'll flag it as being inappropriate, as being too, making a claim that requires independent authentication, that kind of stuff. So there's a risk of shouting it too loud, but at the same time, I would definitely, if you actually put it together and manufacture it in the United States, I wouldn't hide that. I would definitely include that maybe in my A plus content or in my 5th bullet point or something like that. It's just one of those things that kind of reaffirms, like, oh, that's kind of cool. This one's actually made domestically, or whatever marketplace you're selling in.
But if you import your product, that doesn't mean that people aren't going to buy it. Like I said, it's not a big deal. Should you highlight the fact that your brand is domestic? No. Look, there's a lot of people that sell in the U.S. that are in other parts of the country. I don't think you should represent yourself as anything that you're not. The whole point of humanizing your brand is showing people the real people that are there. I had once upon a time, true story, I had a friend from Eastern Europe who was he really liked my idea. I was actually probably one of the first people to teach people back in the day about recording a thank you video and then putting it in your outgoing message to, through Amazon messaging. And my buddy from Eastern Europe loved that idea, but he was like, I have a thick accent. I'm not American. So should I just hire somebody from Fiverr? And I was like, no, be honest. People, aside from just humanizing the brand, people care about authenticity. They want to know for real. If anybody is going to judge you because of the fact that you're not their neighbor, then, that's not your target, customer anyway. But definitely be authentic. That's my take anyway. I don't know if Steve has a different opinion about that.
I have to offer up the opinion of that's exactly the right opinion to have. Be genuine. The fastest way you're going to lose a potential customer is to create any potential doubt in them. If you start getting a bunch of questions on your listing, you start to position yourself as this domestically owned brand. Guess what's going to happen? You're going to get those naysayers in your Q&A that are going to continuously say, hey, I noticed you said you're a domestically owned company. Where are your products made? And you're going to constantly have to reiterate where you're sourcing your products from. And that's no fun for anyone. It just doesn't do anything to elevate you as a brand. So lean into the human element and be honest about it. Who are you guys? What brought, I mean, even if your story literally is just like, we found a great way to source from overseas and bring the best of what we found over there over here, find a way to spin that into something that's a little more digestible, but that's totally fine as long as you're being genuine. The people want to know who's behind the curtain, so to speak. When they press that buy button on Amazon, they want to know whose life are they impacting? What's that exchange look like? So
I like that message. Scoured the earth for the greatest ingredients to make this.
hey, you can spin anything and put it in the right perspective to reach your buyer.
But that's actually really good because that feeds into this next question where someone's asking, is it necessary for a brand story to be real? What if someone doesn't have any story and they just started selling on Amazon? Everybody has a story. And I think that's probably exactly what you're about to say, but I'll let you take that one, Steve.
Everyone has a story. It's harder to coax it out of some of the partners we work with than others. But I guarantee you, this is more than just an idea that you had one night. You've invested a lot of time and money in figuring out how to bring a product to market on Amazon. You have a story to tell. Sometimes it's a couple calls from me and my team to like really just pull that out of you, but you definitely have a story. And if not, we'll create one for you. But it's yeah, I think it's just a matter of modesty that people don't want to talk about who they are and how they got their ideas. But that's what people care about. Products are products. They care about you as the seller.
And I'm seeing consistency in a lot of the questions. People seem to be kind of hung up on the logistics of it, right? So the next one was, would you use up one of the supplemental images for brand story or leave that for A+ only?
It's probably ideal to use up one of those slots if you've got a good if you've got a story to tell it right up there, because we know that most of your customers aren't going to look at your A+, so they might not see your well thought out brand story down below the fold. But just make sure that that image is as great as it possibly can be. The same, you have to ask yourself that of any of your images. It's such prime real estate. What's the purpose of this image, and does it accomplish that purpose? I think that's a great way to use one of those slots, unless you've got a highly technical product that just needs a lot of like nuanced explanation.
Right.
Definitely tell a brand story above the fold.
But your earlier statement was so spot on. Like, can we get the conversion before they ever even go below the fold, right? So if that's your goal, then you tell the story that needs to be told. And that, I know the next question is, well, how do you know what that story is? That comes with knowing your audience. If you do step one, which is know your audience, then the next step is easier because then you know what story needs to be told. And then you can use all the image space that you have to tell that story. Or you let Steve tell it for you, which I think is a point we keep driving home. Our product looks like water when dissolved, makes it easier to have images of happy people using our product. That's a very good point. There you go. See? So the lesson there is source products that make it really easy to like use generic stock imagery. Let's see. What if our product has a good listing optimization and high rank relevant keywords? I have a brand too with the best images, but I run PPC too, but can't get sales. Product has medium competition. What do you recommend? So from an optimization perspective, since that's what we're talking about, how does somebody who thinks that they're already fully optimized,
they're not,
get to the next level?
They're not, and I don't mean that to be cruel or anything like that. It's just more of a case is the reality of just kind of the most brand owners, their perception is based off of what they've been taught by copying somebody else and what they've been taught by a course maybe, as far as how to mimic what somebody else is doing. And unfortunately, you've got to be very specific in your content that you're focusing in on your target audience and the terminology. And if you're not getting any kind of part of it is what conversion rate are you getting outside of advertising? There should be some. And two is when you do advertise on those same words, are you being too narrow in your advertising tactic? You know, like so many people have been taught, like only do exact match keywords, um, you know, and nothing else, you know, and of course that's a ridiculous statement because Amazon is a lot more diverse than that when it comes to their advertising, especially if it's a brand new campaign that Amazon doesn't trust in the first couple of weeks. So there's some begging, does beg some additional questions like how many weeks, how many months have you been advertising and you've gotten no results? What's the cause? Is it a case where you're not getting ad impressions, you're not getting clicks, or you're not getting conversions? You know, where is the break in there? If you have a click-through rate that is horrific, you know, that is 0.18% click-through rate, that's pretty much telling you is like people aren't even wanting to go to your listing because it's not being presented to the right audience. Um, you know, if you got a high click-through rate and you got a very low conversion rate, then you're basically turning them off and pushing them off of your listing because of something that you have in your content that says, don't buy my product for these reasons. That's essentially what's happening if you got a high click-through rate and a very low conversion rate. So usually the advertising is more of a set of metrics that is signaling to you that there's a problem early up the chain, which usually has to do with how are you presenting your product to a specific target audience.
Sweet. Steve, did you have anything to add to that? Or did
No, I think Brian nailed that right on the head. Nothing to add.
Perfect. Okay, so we're closing in on done time.
Hard stop. Yeah.
There are actually 3 more questions though, but 2 of them I want to address quickly. One was any idea, strategy of launching a product with a price range of $500 to $700. That is definitely a much different strategy. We're talking about something that high level, especially on Amazon. So I feel like that should be a discussion maybe on like in a Facebook group or something like that. Probably deserves more input and a different headspace. So I definitely wanted to put it out there that we got that question, but we need to go ahead.
I would say elsewhere. Yeah, if you're not already part of the Amazon PPC troubleshooting group on Facebook, I would go ahead and join in there and then go ahead and post that question up so that we can kind of give you some better feedback. But yeah, there is a different set of strategies that go along with that. Absolutely feasible. The primary things on that is your split testing is going to be substantially different than a product that moves fast, that you can collect data on quickly. Same thing goes with your metrics in general are going to be skewed because you're going to have much lower volume. And so you've got to play a little bit different game and be patient with, you know, putting the quality in front of your target audience, and then building on that. It's not as easy as simply just turning ads on. In fact, that could be actually more dangerous if it's not, if you don't have a proven track record for a higher conversion rate. So yeah, post that. We can definitely expand on that. I noticed there's also a couple of questions that showed up in chat in addition to Q&A. So I don't know if we're going to be able to address all of those, but just crank away for the next couple of minutes here and see if we can.
All right. So I had a highly technical question that'll be actually really easy for me to answer. Does a ratio of sold listings to unsold matter? So does an account have a selling strength? If I sell 1 of 10 listed products, is that better than if I sell 1 of 1,000? So check this out. Amazon treats every listing individually. When it comes to the seller account, we've actually done some research on this and found that Amazon likes it when you have more SKUs. Now, granted, they may or may not give you credit for those more SKUs if they're not selling, but across the board, when a seller had 40 or more actively selling SKUs, they tended to have more of those SKUs ranked higher. So,
however, that doesn't mean 40 variations off your same product.
Yeah, no. Like if you have 40 individual parent SKUs that are actively selling, typically more of those SKUs are ranking. So Amazon does like it when you have more products. There did not appear to be, because I've had clients who've had lots of SKUs that weren't selling at all, like 1 unit a piece, that did not appear to have a negative impact. So it does look like Amazon cares about individual listings, but they also care about large active sellers as well. Hopefully that answers your question. Last question, and then I think we got to stop. Do you care about unit session percentage as a metric?
Oh God, that's the first thing I look at. That's the number one thing that I look at every time. Before advertised conversion rate, I'm going to look at USP. Unit session percentage is your overall conversion rate, and it's on a per product basis. And it's the first thing I look at inside of business reports in the ACE in detail. I look at the number of sessions, and I look at the unit session percentage. And first of all, I compare all the products. If there's multiple products, I compare to see which one does the seller probably think is the hero product because it's just a volume of sales, and what is the product that's being underappreciated, that isn't being seen yet has a much higher conversion rate. So yeah, USP without a doubt, because that also gives me a baseline of where should my advertising conversion rate be at. It should be similar, or close to your USP, your overall conversion rate. And if it's not, it's because of a targeting issue. It's because of the way that the ads are set up correctly or incorrectly.
So yeah, definitely important.
A lot of care.
All right. That's all the questions I got, Brian.
All right, cool. Well, I'm going to close this out here. So thank you very much, Anthony Lee and Steve Patton. Thank you. I really appreciate you guys jumping on here with me today. I think this was awesome. I think we're going to have future discussions because I think it's something we can definitely open up with. Like we mentioned, is that if you've got some additional questions, first and foremost, make sure you get that conversation over with our Canopy team over on canopymanagement.com. If you're not part of Amazon PPC Troubleshooting Group on Facebook, go ahead and join in there, and then post your question, follow-up question that we may have not got a chance to expand on enough or even address in the first place. We'll try to jump in there. And of course, check out that listing optimization calculator that we've got up on Canopy Management. That's pretty cool, definitely relevant to this. We will send out the replay to all of you who attended or all those that registered within, usually it's within 2 or 3 days, and it'll expire in a week. So make sure that you get a chance to take a look at that. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Any closing comments?
I really appreciate the opportunity to have this conversation. I hope that we can again. I want to encourage everybody to, join that Facebook group and let us know if you like this format, if you want us to have more of these conversations and what those topics should be, because this was super fun for me.
Yeah, and I just got clarification from Alexandria. Thank you very much. Is that actually doesn't expire a week from now? It expires on Monday. So you've got this weekend to watch the replay or else. But take action, please. Steve?
Yeah, I just want to chime in with exactly what Anthony just said. This was a super fun format. I hope everybody enjoyed the content. I'd love to do more of these and get some more kind of, just want to know what the topic should be going forward. And I think, I hope we've done a good job of establishing why a brand is really important to consider, or branding in general, as you navigate the waters here on Amazon.
Exactly. All right, gentlemen. Thank you. And thank you, everybody who attended today. Make sure you shout us out on social media, whatever that favorite group is, that you got some value out of this, and especially that you're taking action on what you've learned today. Thank you, everybody. Have a fantastic week.
Take care.